kind of hurry. There are so many things going on here. I hope you get to see all the things that are going on that I sometimes get mixed up where I'm supposed to be. I normally, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I give a shir in the center at 12. So today I just walked in the middle of somebody else giving a shir, and I was wondering, why is he giving my shir? And they said, Thursday. Oh, okay. So if I'm a little late, it's because I'm running around in a lot of different places. So I wanted to be mamshech a little bit, and the minyanim that you've been learning. I understand you actually have two sugyas. One is shlichus b'mitzvahs, and the one I'm doing with you is tosefes Shabbos. And let me go over again a very important prat that you need to be cognizant of in an early Shabbos, because it's nogeya the whole year, not just on Shabbos. It's nogeya even during the week, and that is the issue of what is called tarti de sasri, that you need to be aware of. Again, the makor for all of this starts off in the first Mishnah of Shas, the first Mishnah in Brachas, where the Mishnah says, "Mei masai kairen eshma bi arvis," or arvin, some are gairis. When is the zman of Kriya Shema of Ma'ariv? So it says when the Kohen, that is Tameh, is able to eat his truma, which the Gemara identifies as the period of Tseis HaKechavim. Whatever Tseis HaKechavim is, whether it's Rabbeinu Tam or an earlier Shita, it's after Bein HaShmashos. There's shkiah. There are certainly three stages in nighttime. There is shkiah, there is Bein HaShmashos, there is Tseis HaKechavim. Machlokas, Tseis HaKechavim is earlier or later, but clearly Tseis HaKechavim is after any definition of shkiah. So the Mishnah says, therefore, the Zman Kriya Shema is Tseis HaKechavim. You're not Yaitse Kriya Shema if you read Shema before Tseis HaKechavim, because the Torah says, Uvekumecha, B'shachbecha, it has to be a Zman Shchiva, the Zman of going to sleep. People don't go to sleep until Tseis HaKechavim. Of course, most of us go to sleep a great deal later than Tseis HaKechavim, but you have to understand, in the olden days, when there was no electric light, people tended to go to sleep more or less right after it became dark. There wasn't a lot they could do. That's why there's a machlekes in the Gemara. Was night created for sleep or was night created for learning? Because there really was, those were your only two alternatives, with the candle and the light. So Rashi already brings the question that l'chayra shuls were already davening early. They were davening Ma'ariv before Tseis HaKechavim, and that included Shema and Birchas Kriya Shema. How could they do it? So Rashi says, you're taka not yaitse in the Beis HaKnesses, and the only reason why we read Shema early is we want to be omed shmon esrei mitoch divrei Torah. You want to say a Torah before you daven, and Rashi learns that the real Shema that you're Yaitse with is the Kriya Shema al Hamita, which is read after Tseis HaKechavim. And Tosfos asks a whole bunch of kashas on Rashi, that Kriya Shema al Hamita, the Gemara says, is protection from mazikim, and Kriya Shema al Hamita is only Parsha Rishona, it's not all the three Parshios and the like. All right, so the Pnei Yeshua, answers Rashi in various ways. He says, the reason why the Gemara says mazikin is because even if you davened Ma'ariv after Tseis, you got to say it over again because of mazikin. But Eino Chinami, if you didn't daven Shema until Tseis, you would use it. And Eino Chinami, the din that all you need is Parsha Rishona is only if you daven Ma'ariv after Tseis. If you daven Ma'ariv before Tseis, you got to say all three Parshias. Now, Rabbeinu Tam says a tremendous Kiddush, which we don't paskin like at all, but he says like this. He says, how come even Rashi is Maida? There's no problem with Ma'ariv, Shmona Esrei. Right? At most, Rashi says you got to say Shema again. You don't have to say Shmona Esrei again. The reason is because there's actually a machlekes in the fourth parak of Brachas, in the Mishnah Brachas, when is the end of Zman Mincha. The Chachamim say you can daven mincha until nightfall. I'll discuss what that means. Right? You can daven mincha until nightfall. Rav Yehuda says you can only daven mincha till plag mincha. And we'll go with the simple pshat of the Gra, that this is an hour and a quarter, relative hours, before shkiah Rishayna. Now, Rabbeinu Tam then says the following, although it's not beferish in the Mishnah. Whenever Zaman Mincha stops, Zaman Ma'ariv begins, even though that's not beferish in the Mishnah. Therefore, if according to Rav Yehuda, Zaman Mincha ends at plag, Zaman Ma'ariv begins at plag. And even Rashi is moided to that, because Rashi does not say you got to do Shemona Esrei again. But here is Rabbeinu Tam's Kiddush, which is a very controversial Kiddush. He says, once it's Zaman Ma'ariv for tefillah, that is enough to consider it Zaman Arvis even for Kriya Shema. So according to Rabbeinu Tam, which we do not paskin like, if you daven, according to Rav Yehuda at least, we'll see. According to Rav Yehuda, if you davened Arvis after Plag HaMincha, which is the earliest you could daven Arvis, you would not have to repeat Shema at all, because once it's Laila Lagabe Tefillah, it is Laila Lagabe Kriya Shema. Now the emes is, Rabbeinu Tam, even as a svara, is very, very difficult to understand. I mean, what's the shaychus? Tefillah's Rabbanans, Rav Yehuda considers Plag HaMincha close enough to the evening hours that you can treat it as an evening period. But Kriya Shema doesn't say night. Kriya Shema is b'shach b'cha. Plag HaMincha l'chayr is not as man shechiva. It's a good kasha. Now, here is the thing though. In the machlokes, Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim, what is the hachra? How do we paskin? So the Gemara says, there's no hachra. The Ovid Kamar Ovid. You have the choice of following Rav Yehuda, which means that's a chumrah and a kula. You got to daven mincha before plag and daven ma'ariv after plag. Or you can follow the chachamim that would permit you to daven mincha even after plag, but then you'd have to daven ma'ariv when it becomes dark. I'll talk about what we mean when it becomes dark. That's not so pashut either. So the Gemara says you have a choice. There's a machlokes rishonim. What type of choice do you have? Some rishonim actually learn you got to make a permanent choice. You got to sign up. Are you on Rav Yehuda's team, or are you on the Chachamim's team? You can't make a decision. Oh, today I'll daven mincha before plag, and I'll daven ma'ariv after plag, and tomorrow I'll daven mincha after plag and daven ma'ariv after nightfall, whatever nightfall is. He says you got to be consistent, because that's called tarte de sasre, meaning to say, if you're davening mincha ma'ariv after plag, you're treating it as night. If you're davening mincha after plag, you're treating it as day. You can decide to treat it as day or treat it as night, but it's got to be a permanent decision that cannot go from day to day. That's a very strict view. That's shita number one. Shita number two is you can make a new decision every day as long as you are not inconsistent in that day itself. So Monday, I could daven mincha before plag and daven ma'ariv after plag. Tuesday, I could daven mincha after plag and then daven ma'ariv mishetechshach. We'll talk about what that means. But the only thing you can't do is you can't be self-contradictory on the same day, meaning I can't daven mincha after plag and then daven ma'ariv after plag before nightfall, because then I'm contradicting how I am characterizing it. La halacha, we actually paskin. 2 days you can. That's correct. Because you can say, I don't know what the halacha is, so therefore today I can follow this. So lemaisa, we actually paskin that way. We actually paskin that tarte de sasre is only a prop, right? Mutual contradiction is only a shaila in a single day. It is not a shaila about multiple days. Now,
we meaning everybody, or we meaning
every person, every yachid? What do you mean everybody?
Ashkenazim,
Yeah. We paskin. Now. I'm very bad with names. This is my perennial klala. I mean, I can't give you a list of names. I have to look them up. But these are the shitas. Say again? So this is what I want to talk about. So it turns out like this. Okay, so first let me go back a little because I need to clarify this. According to the Chachamim, you can daven mincha even after plag mincha. And therefore, it's not as man arvis, because we're going with the correlation that arvis doesn't begin until mincha is over. And arvis begins, the Mishnah says, according to the Chachamim, tefillas ha'arvis ad ha'erev, tefillas ha'mincha ad ha'erev, which means ma'ariv begins erev. what does the word Erev mean in the Mishnah? Meaning, when does Mincha end, like the Chachamim, and Ma'ariv begin? So there's a big machlokas. Some people say Erev means shkiah sachama, and some people say Erev is the same thing as Man Kriya Shema, which is Seisek HaChavim. So here is the problem. Let's take you have a typical American show during the week, not Shabbos B'dafka. So typically Mincha is Vadai scheduled after Plag HaMincha, normally. And then they wait, at least it should, till shkiah sachama, and they will daven Ma'ariv after shkiah sachama, but before Seis HaKaychavim. Now, the Yuvadai have to say Kriya Shema again because we don't paskin like Rabbeinu Tam, that because it's a Zman Ma'ariv, you can do Kriya Shema. So Shema, you got to say it again for sure. The question is that called the Tarti de Sasre? Since I did my Mincha after Plag, I did Ma'ariv after Shkiah, but before Tzeisa Kaychavim. So many poskim actually say that is not a Tarti de Sasre, because even though it's before Tzeisa Kaychavim, the Zman Arvis begins with Shkiah. In other words, even Ben Hashmashas is a Zman Arvis, and therefore it's not called a Tarti de Sasre, meaning Ein Achanami, the period before Shkiah I classify as day, according to the Chachamim, and after Shkiah is already Misha Erev. Other Rishonim say that no, the word Ado Erev means Seisa Kaychavim. So according to Rav Yehuda, these are your two choices. Arvis begins, according to Rav Yehuda, from Plag, and according to the Chachamim, from Seis. And therefore, anything after Plag and before Seis is going to be a Tarte de Sasre, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to do it. So if you're davening Mincha after Plag, according to those Shitas, you would have to daven Ma'ariv after Seis. But Lamaisa, there's a great makam to be Mekel. The Mishnah Berurah, in fact, brings these Shitas that even if you daven Mincha after Plag, you can daven Arvis after Shkiah, and that's the Minhag America, I hope more or less. You cannot daven Arvis before Shkiah, because that's a Tarte de Sasre, unless you daven Mincha before Plag. And Ben Kach u'Ben Kach, if you daven before Tzeisa Kaychavim, you would have to say Shema again, even though Rabbeinu Tam would say not. Rabbeinu Tam would actually say not, but we're not somech on Rabbeinu Tam. Now, whether, Tzeisa Kaychavim itself, which we didn't talk a lot about, like Rabbeinu Tam is a later Zman, so many people, so we really don't paskin the Zman of Rabbeinu Tam totally, but many people are nayeg l'chumra only to follow Rabbeinu Tam. But within those who are nayeg l'chumra, there are many variations. Some are only nayeg l'chumra legabe hilchas Shabbos, which is a chiyuv misa, but legabe kriya shema, even which is a doraisa, they are nayeg like the Ga'ainim, which gives you an earlier tzeis, even though they're both doraisa. Others say we're machmer Rabbeinu Tam on doraisas, which would include Yom Kippur, it would include Shabbos, it would include kriya shema, but they're not machmer like Rabbeinu Tam for tefillah. So even if you would hold that tefillah has to be after tzeis, they're not machmer with the tzeis of Rabbeinu Tam, etc. Right? So that's what to keep in mind. Now, Rabbeinu Tam, of course, has a lot of kulas because basically he's not only ma'acher tzeis, he's also ma'acher the definition of shkiah by more than 50 minutes. And there used to be a minhag among those who held like Rabbeinu Tam that they would do malacha Friday afternoon for almost an hour after sunset. That was the minhag of those who held like Rabbeinu Tam, even Lakula. Satmars used to do that. They say in 1948 or whatever it would be, Rav Aaron Cutler had a meeting with the Satmar Rebbe in which he said, can't do malacha after what's called shkiah rishayna. And from then on, even among the Hasidim who held like Rabbeinu Tam, even Lakula, they stopped doing malacha after sunset. We'll call that shkiah, but like Rabbeinu Tam, that's not even shkiah yet. It's not even Ben Hashmashas like that. So this is memela going to be an issue about Tarti de Sasri. So now, let me just mention that immediately you understand that there's going to be a problem with an early Shabbos, because if the pshat is I davened a mincha after plag, then I would have a problem of doing Ma'ariv at least before shkiah. And yet a lot of the early Shabbos minyanim that want to have a uniform time, they want to be 6 p.m. The whole time, there may be a problem. Well, number one, even without Tarta Desasre, there may be a problem, because they might wind up davening Ma'ariv before Plag HaMincha. That actually is not a Tarta Desasre problem. That's Me'ikar Hadin. They're not even Yaitse Ma'ariv before Plag HaMincha. So that's problem number one. You have to be absolutely, positively certain that you're not davening Ma'ariv before Plag. Yes. You're correct. You're correct. But even the Trumas Hadeshin, the Trumas Hadeshin Weisdechais must have held you could be Makabel Shabbos before Plag. But presumably they would have to daven Ma'ariv later. I don't think there was a heter there for Ma'ariv before Plag. It's not clear. An early Plag. Well, if it would work out that way, I think so. But I don't think it worked out based on the tshuva is very obscure because he doesn't tell you b'diyuk exactly what the times were. But that would be a good possibility. So that's problem number one. I mean, that has nothing to do with all of the slumdus. Can't daven Ma'ariv before Plag, and according to Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, you can't be Makabel Shabbos before Plag. Okay, that's another issue. Okay, but let's assume it's after Plag. Okay, your early minyan is after Plag. So then you run into a problem of Tarte Desasre, because if I daven Mincha after Plag and I daven Ma'ariv at least before shkiah, I have Tarte Desasre on the same day, in which Lagabe Mincha I'm going like the Chachamim, and Lagabe Arvis I'm going like Rabbi Yehuda, and the Rishonim say that even though the Ovid Kamar Ovid, with the Ovid Kamar Ovid, you can't have Tarte Desasre on the same day. So here, the Yarchei Kallah does bring that in order to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Tosefes Shabbos, the Yarchei Kallah holds that is enough to matir even Tarte Desasre in one day. So he says, for Tosefes Shabbos, you can do it. In Lumdus, you could be magdir a little bit, perhaps, that since Tosefes Shabbos is giving it the Kedusha of the next day, the Kabbalah Shabbos itself takes away the contradiction, because I'm treating it as night, legabe the halachas of Shabbos. But still, many people are chaylik in the Yarchei Kallah, and therefore, when I was a Rav of a shul for many years in Silver Spring, so we did not have, sometimes people got irritated with me, but we did not have the uniform 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock minyan. What we did was we had to change it all the time. Basically, we davened mincha. We called mincha 15 minutes before shkiah, or 10 or 15 minutes before. Before plag, and then we were makabel Shabbos and Ma'ariv even before shkiah, because at that point you could be saimech on Rav Yehuda for that day, and the like. So the emes is, I'm sure everyone's Rav will paskin the way they paskin, but if any of you are planning on starting your own minyan, whatever, I would advise you lechatchila to try to avoid the Tarte Desasre of that. Now, there's another heter which you brought up. There is another heter which applies even during the week, and that is the heter of tefillah b'tzibor. And that is the issue of the following. If we daven mincha after plag, and we then have to wait, even to after shkiah, and kal v'chaymer if you're going to be machmer after tzeis, and the like, people aren't going to stay, and you're not going to be able to get a minyan, and there is no later minyan for Ma'ariv you can go to. So we matter the yachid, we matter you to do a Tarte Desasre even on a single day in order not to be mafsid the inyan of tefillah b'tzibur. Now, once again, this is a little bit of a strange halacha, because the people who are dispersing are not doing right, meaning the minyan is not noye keshura, but if lamaisa, that is the situation that you are faced with, you as an individual are allowed to daven Ma'ariv before shkiah, after plag, even if you daven mincha afterwards, in order not to be mafsid the inyan of tefillah b'tzibor. Now, let's go the other way for a moment. What about davening mincha, generally, after shkiah. So again, let me point out, according to Rabbeinu Tam, if you actually went, I don't mean the Rabbeinu Tam by Kriya Shema, according to Rabbeinu Tam Zamanim, you actually, after shkiah is still day until around 52 minutes after shkiah, which he calls shkiah achrona. So according to Rabbeinu Tam, there's absolutely no halachic problem with davening after shkiah because you're not davening after shkiah. It's important to understand that. People say, Rabbeinu Tam holds you can daven after shkiah. Actually, Rabbeinu Tam holds you cannot daven after shkiah, but because of his definition of shkiah, after shkiah is not after shkiah, right? That's what it is. But nevertheless, practically, if we just look at shkiah as sunset, according to Rabbeinu Tam, you could daven kimat after shkiah. So the emes is, this is a limit zechus on Hasidim. People think, oh, Hasidim don't care about shkiah. The truth of the matter is, the minhag among Hasidim was to be soimech on Rabbeinu Tam, even legabe Shabbos. They were doing malachas during this time. So for shteitzach, they could be soimech on Rabbeinu Tam, legabe mincha. That was not a problem. But once again, though, they have to be tarti desasre. They couldn't daven Ma'ariv till either tzeis or a few minutes before, 13 minutes before tzeis, which would be bein hashmashas. So they too have to have a tarti desasre, or they have the rule of tarti desasre, but they would have to calibrate it according to Rabbeinu Tam Zamanim.
Kamar Ovid with Rabbeinu Tam and our own things. I usually have 4 minutes late, so today I'm going Rabbeinu Tam.
So you're talking about with Tzeitzig Chazid?
Well, with the mincha.
Yeah. So that's a little different. I mean, that's a little different because remember, there is no general halachic rule. Today I'll do this. This is a hachra in the Gemara.
Right.
So the Gemara, when the Gemara gives you rishus, you can do it. Otherwise, you cannot. And indeed, I mean, the Mishnah Berurah is very emphatic that since Miyikar Adin we paskin like the Gaonim, that shkiah is the end of Zman Mincha. Right? This is like the Gaonim. Shkiah is the end of the Zman Mincha, and that's why it's the beginning of the Zman Arvis. And that's the halacha l'maisa we paskin. So the Mishnah Berurah says you do not daven mincha after shkiah, even if you're going to lose a minyan. Meaning to say, if I'm in a minyan and we only have 9 people and the clock is ticking, and we're not going to have a minyan till after shkiah, I should daven mincha biyachidus. Now, whether b'di'evet, if I didn't daven mincha before shkiah, am I allowed b'chiyai gavna to daven mincha b'teiras Rabbeinu Tam? So that's again a machlokas. Some say b'di'evet, not to be mafsid tefillah legamrei. You know, if you're stuck, you can be samech on Rabbeinu Tam. Others say no. Others say you daven 2 ma'arivs. I missed shkiah. I daven 2 ma'arivs. I do not. I'm not samech on Rabbeinu Tam to allow me to daven further. But I just want to say that once again, it's important to understand that Hasidim are not simply. I mean, I'm not defending them for Zman Kriya Shema of the morning and Zman Tefillah. That's another issue. But the Chala Pachas, for the shkiah of Mincha, there is a basis for what they're doing.
The definition of davening, like when you start for plag, not that if I start my Shema Esrei,
Yeah. So this is a good this is a good question about everything. Let's look at all Zmanei Tefillah. Chatzais, right? Chatchila Dalit shows 4 hours. B'di'eved Shachris Zad Chatzais. So what does that mean? If I start in the right time, I finish the wrong time. So once again, as you would figure, there is a machlekes. The Yikar Hachra is that vadai lechatchila, you have to finish tefillah belachash for sure, and lechatchila even chazaras hashatz should be finished before this man. B'di'evet, there's a machlekes. Now, one of the Hasidic Rebbe's brings a very interesting raya. It's a derech drush, but it's a fascinating raya. Remember Bilam, right? The Gemara in Bracha says, what was Bilam's great talent? That there was a short Zman every day that Hashem has anger on the world, and Bilam knew that Zman, Yoda, Bilam, Mechavin Hasha, and he was able to curse. So Frek Taisus Akasha, but what could you say? By the time you say anything, the time is over. So Taisus gives an answer. He could have said, Kalem, 1 word, destroy them. Another learns that once the door is open, as long as you began when it was the right Zman, so the klala could be nimshach. So says the Rebbe, we know Hashem's midah taiva, Hashem's generosity is greater than his midah sadin. So if even in Midas Adin, as long as you began the right time, you'll be allowed to finish. Kal v'chaymer, that as long as I began my tefillah in the right time. All right, that's...
So this Rebbe is
Yeah.
Chayla Contaisus?
No. He's giving another teretz. So yeah, okay, it's a teretz, whatever. No, I don't remember. Does Tais?
Finish within this month.
Yeah. So Taisus is a raya fakert. Yeah, but nevertheless, the Pri Megadim brings achronim that say as long as you're maschil, not from that raya, but as long as you're maschil, you can. So maybe it's only for midas perennius, right? Maybe fakert, right? So it is a machlekes. So lahalacha, if you found yourself stuck, let's assume that it's like 5 minutes to 12, and you're going to be. I'm assuming chatzais is 12, just for illustration, and you're going to begin your amida. So the question is, should I begin? So we would say begin and be soimech, and then be masna, meaning if the halacha is I could be mamshech, this should be tefillah shachris. If not, it should be tefillas nedava. But that type of tanai creates enormous problems because it creates a dilemma regarding mincha. Because if the pshat is my late shachris was a tefillas nedava, I'd have to daven mincha twice. So what do I have to do? So I got to do 2 minchas and be masna on the second mincha, that if I was not Yaitse Shachris and that was an adava, this should be mincha. If I was Yaitse Shachris, I'm making this second tefillah to be a tefillas nedava, right? So, right. Well, that's how you get it. That's how you get Kol Yom Kula. Yeah.
Regarding Shabbos Seudah, that some people say that if you miss, you're supposed to have a Kiddush before shkiah.
Yeah.
If you miss it, you have 13 minutes. Is there a makor for that? And if yes, can you apply that to
Yeah. The makor of 13 minutes, 13 and a half minutes technically, is simply, this is the halachic shiur, although it has to be measured, it has to change during the year. It's not fixed. That's the problem. But it's the shear of Bein Hashmashais according to the Gainim. The Gainim actually say that shkiah, sunset, is the beginning of Bein Hashmashais, and we consider Laila to be 13 and a half minutes after shkiah. Now, but once again, to apply that indiscriminately the whole year is incorrect, because remember, the calculation of that time is 3/4 of a meal, basically. Remember, a hiluch meal is 18 minutes. Bein Hashmashas is 3/4 of a meal, like the Gainim, which will translate to 13 and a half minutes. It's based on 3/4 of a meal, based on the cheshbon of hiluch meal, 18 minutes. But once again, as we said, that shear of Bein Hashmashas is only on an equinox day, and at various times of year it'll be longer, never shorter, but it'll be longer, and the like. So to automatically simply give yourself 13 and a half minutes throughout the year appears to be, although people do bring it, seems to be an incorrect shiur and the like. And it's also difficult, b'chlal, to shtim the Ga'ainim with the Metzias. 13 and a half, I mean, nobody ends Shabbos any day of the year. 13 and a half minutes. But nevertheless, the Ga'ainim claim that you should be able to see Gimel Kaychavim, 13 and a half minutes. And I see that Bisman Hazeh, they say it's almost impossible, but they say there are some, they found some Bikiyim who have better eyesight and they know where to look. It's also telling that you can actually see the beginnings of 3 Kaychavim as early as 13 and a half minutes on an equinox day. By the way, there are many rayas in the Gemara, many rayas from Mishnayos, that people had tremendously better. I know that to say Nishtana Hateva is always a big daichik. Whenever you come across something in the Gemara that doesn't fit with human physiology or biology, so, the Teva changes. It's always a little daichik because you're not talking about, a million years ago. You're talking about a relatively short time. The kazesim, right? The eggs are much smaller, all these things. The native Yehuda's famous shita that the eggs were doubled. But the truth is, it just mentions that people's eyesight, people could see long, long distances. And the truth of the matter is, with respect to stars and the like, a lot of it is a function of experience. We're not used to looking up at the sky that much, and we have light pollution and air pollution and all sorts of things. If you're raised in a certain sviva, l'maisa, you can see a lot of things up there that you won't notice under regular conditions. So Alipa Diemis, according to the Gainim, there's at least 2 days of the year where Shabbos would be over, Me'ikar Adin, 13 and a half minutes after shkiah. The only thing is, like Rabbeinu Tam, the 13 and a half minutes doesn't start till 57 and a half minutes afterwards, and that's how you get to 72. Meaning, Rabbeinu Tam is also Moda. See, this is important. Rabbeinu Tam is also Moda that the shir bein hashmashais is 3/4 of a meal. He's also Moda to that. But he doesn't start the 3/4 of the meal till you've had 3 1/4 meal from sunset. And at that point, 3 1/4 meal from sunset is called shkiah achreina, and then you start measuring bein hashmashas. You see, understand this? In other words, Rabbeinu Tam and the Chelkim and the Ga'inim have the same shiur for bein hashmashas, but they're simply cholek. At what point do you start it? Rabbeinu Tam starts it later. Okay, yeah.
When we're saying that people are machmir to Rabbeinu Tam, but if you hold, like, let's say Satmar, that Ikar Adin, Bein Bekula, you follow Rabbeinu Tam. So even Aaron Kadler says for consistency in America we have to keep one Shabbos, but it seems like the early part is the Chumrah. The late part would be the halacha.
That's correct. That is correct. That is correct. Meaning, I mean, I don't know what the official Satmar position is, if there is an official position, but you are correct. Even after Rav Aaron's conversation, the chiyuv of waiting 72 would be Me'ikar Adin.
For them. And the early it would be the...
It's the early that would be a Tosefes Shabbos and the like. Of course, you get into real problems. It's not clear what Rav Aaron is actually doing, because remember that Rabbeinu Tam is a different calculation for plag mincha. Because again, plag mincha is an hour and a quarter before shkiah. But the before shkiah is Rabbeinu Tam shkiah. So that actually means plag mincha, I think we came up with a cheshbon, even on an equinox day, would be 18 fixed minutes before shkiah, not an hour and a fourth. So it turns out, when... so a Satmar would have to be careful in calibrating this. In other words, according to the Satmar, you wouldn't be allowed to be Makabel Shabbos and do light candles earlier than 18 minutes before shkiah Rishayna. So yes, Rav Aaron could get them to stop doing malacha before shkiah, but he couldn't allow an early Ma'ariv and the like. So like Rabbeinu Tam, you'd have a lot of, if you hold like Rabbeinu Tam even Lakula, you'd have a lot of problems with the Shabbos minyan. Now, I did mention a kasha to you. So Tarti de Sasri is one very important issue to be aware of, although the Yarchei Kallah is Mekel for Tosefes Shabbos. I had mentioned to you a fundamental machlekes Rishayim, if Tosefes Shabbos is even deraisa bichlal. Right? The Rambam Shita is that it is only Tosefes Yom Kippurim. That's the Araisa, not Tosefes Shabbos. So if I'm a Kabbalah in early Shabbos, it's only Shabbos midrabanan. So how can I be Yaitse, Kiddush, and seudah in a Zman that is not even Kedusha Shabbos D'Oraisa, like the Rambam Shita? So someone will learn. I think some of you guys, yeah. Yeah, what does he say?
Says you learn from Shavuos. It's a
Yeah.
that then on Shavuos you can't have any Tosefes Kedusha.
Yeah.
Mashma, then other days you put. So you know Midrabanan you're doing it, but the rise to work because Torah.
Okay,
Kallah,
so what?
he says
Right.
So that's why you be yaitza. It says v'zem yushul had yaitzim day kiddush laila min Torah.
Yep.
I feel madam teseshat rabbanon.
Right.
Because it turns
In
the
other
Kallah.
In other words, you have to be mechalek between the chiyuv that I have to be Ma'aseh Michol ala Kodesh and the efficacy if I do it. Meaning, when we say Tosefes Shabbos is midrabanan, we mean that the Oraisa I am not mechuyev to be Ma'aseh Michol ala Kodesh. But Ein Achinami, the way the Nitziv was masber, the kayach to be kaiveya Kedusha Shabbos, if I do it, that'll be a Doraisa. So this is important chiluk. When we say Tosefes Shabbos midrabanan, we don't mean the Kedusha of Shabbos. The Kedusha of your Haisafa is may be Doraisa. But you're not mechuyev. You're not mechuyev to be Ma'aseh Michol ala Kodesh. So that's why it's a davar pashat that in Tosefes Shabbos you can make Kiddush. So no one questions that, provided your arvis was not tarti de sasre, you can make Kiddush early. But the Mishnah Berurah brings shitas about seudah, because they say that the limud of shalosh seudas for Shabbos is because the Torah says Yom ichlu haybayman ichlu hayayim ki Shabbos hayayim loitim subasada, and even though Yom obviously includes night, and it's part of it, but Yom, the hakpada of Yom says you're only yaitse on the etzem dika Yom. It's like etzem hayayim izakain, and you're not yaitse b'tesefes Shabbos. So because of this, the Mishnah Berurah says that even if you're makabel Shabbos early, even if you make Kiddush early, even if you make seudah early, you have to be makbid to eat at least a kazayas of bread after. Now, here it would have to be after tzeisak kachavim, actually. After shkiah wouldn't be enough, because like the gainim, shkiah is only bein hashmashas. Like Rabbeinu Tam, it's still yom. So I'm not sure if that's going to help you. I mean, part of why we make the early Shabbos is I shouldn't have to be mamshech the seudah late, but usually tzeisak kachavim is not gore so late. The early tzeisak kachavim will, 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. It's not going to be so gefelach and the like. Now, one other thing about Kriya Shema, and that is there is a general halacha in the Shulchan Aruch that you're not allowed to be maschele seudah within 1/2 an hour. And this is fixed. This is not Simanias. You're not allowed to begin a seudah within 30 minutes of Zman Kriya Shema. It's interesting. I read one of my favorite biographies, I've mentioned this a lot of times, is Rav David Feinstein. I love, when Rav Moshe was nifter, I knew Rav Moshe a little bit. I thought to myself, there could never be another human being that would have his midos and his godless. And then Baruch Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him a son that kind of has those midos. And in one way, I'll say Rav David was greater than Rav Moshe. I'll tell you this way. When Rav Moshe walked into a room, you knew Gadol Hador walked into a room. There was an aura. Rav David was zeicha to such a madrega of anava that you didn't necessarily know it. Regular guy. He wasn't a regular guy, but, ad kedei kach, his godless was legamri mechusa until, of course, you got to know him. So they mentioned a story that when Rav David was on a fundraising mission with a lot of people for Eretz Yisrael, so they go to a house and people are, the Rosh Yeshiva or the Rabbanim are mesupik. Can I eat this? Can I not eat this? And he was just eating everything that was there. And, he wasn't asking questions. He was saimich, and then they came to another house, which was charedi, sheba charedi, etc. And he wouldn't eat a thing. So they asked Rav David, the first house, we weren't 100% sure. And the second house, we are 100% sure. He says, well, listen, the first house, Eid echad neman bisurin. It's a halach in Shulchan Aruch. Eid echad. So you're telling me to not follow Chazal? Eid echad neman bisurin. Memela. Second house, he says, you're starting a seudah half an hour before Zman Kriya Shema. He says, did people forget about that? People forget about the halach in the Shulchan Aruch, and they're going into it. Now, this is going to be very nogeya, because if we go like the Gainim, the earlier Zman of Tseis HaKeichavim, so if you're within a 30 minutes, this is not Simanias, if you're within 30 minutes of Tzetzik HaKavim, you would not be allowed to begin Kiddush until you said Kriya Shema and the like. So I remember in Ner Yisrael, this happened all the time. We actually did make, I'm trying to think why, I don't know why we did it, but apparently we used to make early Shabboses, and the first thing we would do when we come into the dining room is we would say the Gimel Parshias of Shema before we said Kiddush. So that's a hora to keep in mind. Now, among Hasidim, there's another thing. Hasidim have a minhag based on Kabbalah not to begin the Seudah Shabbos in Mazel Madim, when the Mazel of Mars is Sholed, and that's 6 p.m. That's fixed 6 p.m. So I remember when I was I used to be by the Boston Rebbe a lot when I was in law school. Me and 100 other people, but Baruch Hashem, it was a very, very beautiful experience. But if we finished, obviously it took a long time to get everybody seated. So if Ma'ariv was finished 5:45, I remember this mad rush to get upstairs and let's start Kiddush, because if the clock hit 6, we're going to have to wait until 7. A whole hour. He would not make Kiddush between 6 and 7 p.m. So I remember, like, there were times like we missed it by a minute, got to wait an hour, so we were always trying to be sure with that.
Starting the seudah in a half hour.
Yeah, of Kriya Shema.
Or on Kriya
Yeah.
Shema. The shomer works on this, or shomer doesn't?
A shomer does work on it, actually. A shomer does work on it, but that presupposes a shomer who, is going to eat later or whatever.
So David would
Yeah.
be Simon on the other Kedalim that were with him.
Maybe. Oh, David was their shomer. Okay. that could be. Yeah.
Wife be the
What
shomer.
sace would we use to calculate that 30 minutes? Because if
Yeah, so we paskin again, we paskin at least l'chumra that you have to follow the shita of the Ga'ainim. Now the shita of the Ga'ainim, the way you calculate it, and you have to look at a luach really, because you would have no way of figuring it out b'etzem. But the shita of the Ga'ainim is that on an equinox day, Seisa Kechavim is 13 and a half minutes after sunset, and that's a certain magnitude of darkness, which is 3.7 degrees below the horizon. So any given day where the darkness is 3.7, I think, below the horizon is going to be Seis, and that can vary from 13 and a half minutes to around 20, 25 minutes.
because I wonder.
So it's no longer, I believe, the longest it is, even though for Shabbos we obviously are machmer for longer. But Legabe Kriya Shema, the longest in Eretz Yisrael at least is 25 minutes.
Because if you look on the Luach, they're probably going to show you sace from the Shabbos as the longer one.
Well, no, most luchos will give you both things. I think they'll give you tzeis and they'll give you tzeis of Rabbeinu Tam. But it's complicated. If you ask me on any given day what is tzeis, it depends on a magnitude of darkness based on 13 and a half minutes after shkiah. Let me just end before we break. Let me just end with one very interesting halacha of the Taz. Another halacha. The Taz has two interesting halachas, but I think you only have one of them. You have the Taz's chiddush of Shavuos, that you're not makabel Shabbos, you're not makabel Yom Tov early, or at least you're not makadesh early, because Tamimai Shavuos has to be after Tamimais. And that's a chiddush of the Taz, and not everybody agreed with it, but it's become makubal in most of the Torah world that we're nayag like the Taz on this inyan. But let me give you another Taz in Hilchos Rosh Hashanah, which is very fascinating. He gives a Maaseh Shahoya of a kehillah that didn't have a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah was Thursday and Friday. Thursday and Friday, right? It could be Thursday and Friday. Nebuch, there was no shofar on Thursday. There was no shofar on Friday, and they were waiting and waiting. Maybe a shaliach would bring a shofar. Finally, it was late afternoon after plag mincha, so they decided, Nebuch, we're not zeicha to the mitzvah of Tekiyah shofar. L'chol hapachas, let's be makabel Shabbos early, because even on Yom Tov, it's interesting. Even on Yom Tov, although may not be so pashut, you could be makabel Shabbos early because you're being machmer, you're being chomer. And punkt after they were makabel Shabbos, I think after they daven Ma'ariv, so it's still daytime. It's before shkiah. Shaliach comes running in with a shofar. Now, granted, it's Yom Tov Sheni, so even on Rosh Hashanah, it would be a drabanan l'chol hapachas. But the question is, can they blow shofar on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, which is Friday, if they already were makabel Shabbos? So the Taz paskin, they can, even with a bracha, and he gives two different svaras for it. Svara number one is, it's a Kabbalah Shabbos betois, because Kabbalah Shabbos, many Acharayim say, has a din of a neder. If I make a neder because I thought I didn't have shofar, if they would have known a shofar was coming, they thought I wouldn't have been makabel Shabbos. It's a Kabbalah Shabbos betois, mele it's nekar, it's not a Kabbalah Shabbos, they could go shofar. Without a torah. He says that's a tois which is muchach, absolutely. But then he gives another svara, which is more lamdasha, and he says like this. He says, Tosefes, and we talked about this, and I think you've seen stuff about that. Tosefes Shabbos doesn't make it the next day. Tosefes Shabbos, because first of all, you're not a balabas to do that. How can you make it the next day? And you certainly couldn't leave Yom Tov. I don't know, what would give me the kayach to be mafkiya kedushas Yom Tov and make it to that, even if I'm making it Shabbos. It's a Yom Tov here. So Tosefes Shabbos is not the pshat, I accelerate into the next day, but rather I bring forward the isurim of the next day and I impose it on this day. But this day still blibes Rosh Hashanah. I didn't make it Gimel Tishrei. It's still Rosh Hashanah. So even if there is a Kabbalah Shabbos, I can blow Shabbos. Now, you may ask me another question. Okay, you may ask me another question. Okay, but the Chachamim said you're not allowed to blow on Shabbos. So the answer is that Gezerah doesn't apply to Tosefes. I mean, that's a separate Nekuda. But in terms of making it the next day, the Taz says it doesn't apply. Now, this is Negea a lot of things. This is Negea Sfira, a big problem. I'm a Kabbalah Shabbos early, and I remember I didn't count Friday Sfira. Can I count Friday Sfira while it's still daytime without a bracha, right? Remember, if I count during the day, I count without a bracha, and then I continue with the bracha. But I was Makabel Shabbos. How can I daven Sfira? How can I count Sfira? So like the Taz, the pshat is, it's still the old day. Now, the only question you may ask me is, so what about Mincha? This is an issue that arises. If I was Makabel Shabbos, and then I remember I did not daven the Vachadika Mincha. I didn't daven Friday Mincha. So some Taka do say it's a Tarti de Sasre. Once you're Koveya Shabbos, you can't daven Mincha. Like the Taz, it's a little shver. Why that would be so? It could be that the Taz takes the position. He was at Baruch. Yeah. But it could be like the Taz, Now, it's interesting. See, the idea of Taz is interesting. Let me explain this. The idea of Kabbalah Shabbos B'Tais is not going to work when I'm nigrar basar that's sibor and it's only my problem. Meaning, you could say if I was Makabel Shabbos and I didn't daven Mincha, that's a Kabbalah Shabbos under mistake, because had I known, I wouldn't have been Makabel Shabbos. But if I'm mechuyev to keep Shabbos because the tzibur was Makabel Shabbos, my mistake is not going to take me out of that. You hear? In other words, the situation of the Yochid davening Mincha or whatever is different than a tzibur that didn't hear Tekiyah Shofar, because you don't have the svara of Kabbalah Shabbos B'Tais, but you still have the second svara of the Taz, that you didn't make it the next day. In other words, so there's a nafkamina, I think, in the two svaras of the Taz when you're dealing with whether I could make up my vachadika mitzvah when it's my mistake and it's not the tzibur's mistake.
Sometimes it's first svara.
Yeah.
And they'd be required to be Makabel Shabbos.
That's correct.
Again,
That's
but
correct.
The second svara allowed that.
That's correct. According to the second svara of the Taz, the Kabbalah Shabbos was not nispatel, but afilu hachi, it's not the next day.
So what was the case?
What did they? I don't know. I mean, the truth is, I have to go back and look at the lashon because the Taz was not there. Apparently, this was a shaila he heard about afterwards. So I don't even know what it was. You know, everyone knows, of course, the Taz was the son-in-law, was the Adam of the Bach. So they tell a Maisa, there are two Maisim they tell about the Taz and the Bach. Again, forgive me for just ending with the Maisa. Maisa number one is that the Bach agreed. The Bach actually was independently wealthy. In fact, he held that a Rav should not depend on the Kehillah, and he supported many people. So he agreed to support the Taz in learning for a number of years, give him a fleshik meal every day, and at some point the Bach had some financial difficulty, so he gave him lung, reya, which is an inferior type of meat. So the Taz took his shver to a din Torah because he felt that it was staring his learning. He wasn't learning as well. So I don't even know who won, but the Bach says to the Taz, is there, what's going on here? What do you assume? He says, no. Oh, no, forget, the Bach did win. They paskin reya is basar. So he said, listen, there was a big kitrug against you in Shemayim, that you were giving me inferior meat, and my learning was stared, and I chas v'shalom, I didn't want you to get punished. So I wanted there to be a psak din in Beis Din Shalmata that this is flesh. Memela, I was matzil. My kavanah was legamri, to be matzil because I knew what the halacha would be, and I didn't want there to be a kitrug, and the Beis Din Shalmala will be maskim to the Beis Din Shalmata. Yeah, well, legamri, yeah, well, that's right, lo b'shamayim, exactly right. In fact, they tell about the Shagas Aryeh story, that the Shagas Aryeh was the Rav of Volozhin. In fact, he was the Rav of Rav Chaim Volozhiner's mishpacha in Volozhin. And he had paskin that a certain defect in a reya, another long story, was not a treifa. And in all of the rest of Europe, they paskined it was treifa. But in Volozhin, they ate certain meat, couldn't eat anywhere else. So there was a fellow that had a lung condition that paralleled this treifa. And he wanted to go to a better climate that would be healthier for him. The Shagasai say, don't go. Because in Volozhin, the basin Shalmaila is maskim, you're not a treifa. You leave Volozhin, the basin Shalmaila will paskin, you are a treifa. Chazal say a treifa cannot live for more than 12 months. You leave Volozhin, you're going to die within a year. You stay in Volozhin, you'll live. So the guy thought this was crazy. He left, and the Maisa goes, he died within the year because the halacha changed. But the second Maisa with the Taz was when his Rebbetzin was Niftaris, the Bach's daughter. He gave, they say, a magnificent hesped, beautiful hesped, mamish. Everyone was crying. And then he wanted to marry another daughter of the Bach. Achai Sisha is mutter, Achar Misa Sishta. So the story goes, the Bach said no. He says, you gave such a beautiful hesped, you must have prepared ahead of time. So he says, if you're preparing already, Ayan Haras, he says, I don't want to get involved in it. So that's another Maisa with the Taz. Okay, anyway.
Going back to the weekday,
Yeah.
If one davens mincha before plag, is there more kind of locha to wait till shkiah for Ma'ariv, or we can daven right after plag?
No, you can daven right after. There's no reason to wait because Mimanashech, Legabe Kriya Shema, you're not going to be Yaitse anyway. And Legabe Shemona Esrei, you gotta have a Kamar of it. Yeah, for sure you can do it. Yeah. Now, if you're asking me if I daven before plag, is there an Indian to wait for Arvis till Tseis? The answer is yes, because that way you're Makayim Kriya Shema with brachas. So if you're telling me I'll wait till Tseis, I would say wait. But wait till after shkiah, I don't think there'd be any Indian for that. Yeah.
So Rav Shulchan said that we allow for Tosefes Shabbos early. But we keep seeing over and over again that Tosefes Shabbos is only if you do it the entire year for Tosefes Shabbos, not if it's just like a summer minyan because you want to daven early.
No, that's
to be mechuyev to be nigra achar tibor is only if they.
That's Rav Moshe. Yeah, that's Rav Moshe's famous tshuva, that if you're makabel Shabbos early for convenience reasons, and you don't do it the whole year, you don't do it in the winter, mimela, the wife is not nigrar basor, the husband. On the other hand, I think it's not clear if that means the yachid is not nigrar basor the tzibur. Did you see? Does he say that? Does he say that too? I'm gonna have to look because many say Rav Moshe's svara. Rav Moshe himself is addressing husband and wife. Now it could be yachid tzibur may be the same thing, but even if it's so. Rav Moshe is not, these poskim are not saying you're not makayim Tosefes Shabbos if I do it after convenience. He's just saying it's not azah Kabbalah that's going to be gorer the people who were not makabel. But that's not a negation. That's mitoch shalol l'shma b'al l'shma. Even though I'm makabel Shabbos for convenience reasons, l'maisa I have the mitzvah, and l'maisa the Tosefes is chal. Yeah.
And the issue about tefillah before Shema, I always wonder about this in America. During not an early minyan, but a regular Shabbos minyan, because if I don't know how many people are, but if you're noeg to say Shema at the Zman of Rabbeinu Tam, most of the Friday night minyanim will finish before Rabbeinu Tam, so then l'chora you should say Shema before your Friday night seudah, right?
Well, if you paskin like that you follow Rabbeinu Tam Shita even for Zman Kriya Shema, then yeah, you do it half an hour before. But as I say, many people, even if they're machmer like Rabbeinu Tam, they're machmer only for Shabbos and maybe for Yom Kippur. Some not even for Yom Kippur. They are not machmer even on Kriya Shema, which is the Araisa. So it would depend on what your hanhaga is. And it's always a little bit murky. If I try lechatchila to go like Rabbeinu Tam, am I really being makabel Rabbeinu Tam? It's not always very clear. It's like, I'll do it when I do it, and when I don't do it, it's when I don't do it. Meaning not every hanhaga will automatically turn into a hachra that I'm going like Rabbeinu Tam. Yeah.
I just want to know what this
svara is behind why it is that you either have to start or finish mincha, let's say, before shkiah. What's the thinking?
No, well, there's actually a very, very good svara, because remember that we paskin that even though the tefillahs are from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, not the nusach, but the idea, but they're supposed to correspond to the korbanos cycle of the Beis Hamikdash. So what do we say? Shachris is keneged the Tamid Shel Shachar, and Mincha is Tamid Shel Ben Arabayim, and Mariv is the extra heter, chalav, and veivarim that you didn't burn. Now, the Gemara says in Zevachim, Dam is nifsel mishkiah sachama. If I collect the blood of a korban tamid, and I wasn't zayrek it before shkiah sachama, I can't. The korban is puzzle, which means korban tamid shel ben arbayim. It's not only a rule that you can't bring it at night. It's a rule you can't bring it after shkiah. Meaning, even if, in fact, some want to say even like Reina Tam, okay, that's a separate thing, but whatever shkiah is. So that would mean, therefore, that even though, see, if you were writing on pure lumdish, you could say, well, listen, after shkiah is bein hashmashas. Bein hashmashas is safek yom, safek laila. Minchas drabanan, safek drabanan lakula. Let me daven bein hashmashas. I mean, you could say such a lashon, right? Such a lumdis. But the answer is no, because lagabe korban tamid, the dam is nifsel mishkiah. And therefore mincha can't be after shkiah because...
So according to the other shita that says that you can do it, you don't have to finish it, or you can finish it after...
Why you can finish it? So they would be medame. I think maybe they're medame like this. I mean, I don't know. The beginning of your davening is like Zerika Saddam. And the rest of your davening is heter, chalav, and veivarim. That could be, kol halayla at that point. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Oh.